What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We've got Vasiliy Lomachenko, 14 wins, 2 losses, returning to the ring for the first time since losing all of his belts to Teofimo Lopez. Lomachenko returns to the ring to take on Masayoshi Nakatani, 19 wins and 1 loss. And that 1 loss was against Teofimo Lopez. So that's one thing that Lomachenko and Nakatani have in common. So this is Lomachenko's long-awaited return, and public sentiment or the public view on Lomachenko and his abilities, where he is right now in his career, it's really taken a bit of a 180. I mean, there's still many still on board with the idea that Lomachenko is among the absolute best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport, and then others think that he's either over the hill because he's now like 33 years old in a smaller division. He's been injured a couple times over the years. He's had, more difficulty fighting at lightweight 135 than he did in the divisions below that. Or some think that he was, a little bit overrated to begin with, which I cannot agree with that assessment. You'd have to explain to me fight over fight what is underrated about the public perception of Lomachenko's abilities since he entered the professional realm after being a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. So, the Olympics come around every 4 years, right? So he was the best in the world in his division 1 year, and then 4 years later, when they did it again, he captures gold once again. It's a very rare feat, but he did that. Now, I will say that Lomachenko has had a shorter professional career than some of the other greats, and that is because he turned pro late because of his extended amateur career. But since hitting the professional realms, he had lost that pretty controversial decision against Orlando Salido, who kind of, spoiled the intro for Lomachenko. This was at the Alamo Dome. Salido's a super rugged fighter. He's had, fights of the year in the past, and he just brings hell for 12 rounds. Very durable, throws a ton of volume, has a very awkward kind of bruising style, even roughhousing on the inside. It was a lot of things that were working against the craftsman who was just becoming a professional. And not to mention, Salido also blew weight for that fight, but nonetheless, he was awarded a split decision win over Lomachenko. So there was a point in Lomachenko's career where he was 1-1 as a professional. And it was like, hey, should we, kind of temper this Lomachenko party? Because he came into the professional ranks very hyped. Well, his third professional fight was against somebody who to this day is a pound-for-pound talent. He hasn't had a pound-for-pound career. In fact, he's one of the most frustrating champs to watch and to track fight over fight because of the lack of competition that he's fighting and defending his WBC belt. But Gary Russell Jr. was Lomachenko's third professional fight. Gary Russell Jr. features some of the fastest hands in any weight class. And Lomachenko beat him pretty decisively. It was a majority decision, so the judges had it pretty close. But as I'm watching the fight, I thought that it was a clear victory for Lomachenko. Again, Gary Russell would go on to win the WBC 126-pound featherweight title against Johnny Gonzalez and has held on to that title since, basically fighting once a year, defending his title against sometimes a pretty decent fighter like King Tug Nyambiar, other times against a virtual no-name. So it's really been a disheartening experience in watching Gary Russell's opponent selection. But that win brought Lomachenko to 2-1, and he would go on to basically just own the 126 and then 130-pound divisions. Granted, he was only the WBO featherweight champ, but then when he went to junior lightweight 130, he beat the likes of Nicholas Walters, who's the one who knocked out Nonito Donaire when Nonito Donaire was still one of the pound-for-pound best in the sport. Lomachenko gave Nicholas Walters his first and only loss, and Walters actually quit on the stool between rounds, as did 2 other Lomachenko opponents. So Lomachenko went on to beat, Jason Sosa, Miguel Mariaga. He beat Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, Rigondeaux was a much smaller fighter and an old fighter. So Rigondeaux is also one of the only people to win 2 Olympic gold medals. But Rigondeaux won it in 2000 and 2004. Lomachenko won his in 2008 and 2012. So that tells you what the age difference was between the two. Plus, this was Rigondeaux basically coming up 2 weight classes to meet Lomachenko. So I thought that this was a mismatch to begin with, and Rigondeaux quit on the stool after like the 5th or 6th round. So Lomachenko's just looking like a phenom, even though both at 126 and 130, he really only held the WBO share of the title. So it's not like he was unifying championships. In fact, the fight that I always wanted to see was him versus Mikey Garcia. To this day, I think that that would have been a showdown for the ages, whether they did it back when they were 130 fighters or obviously at 135, where Lomachenko would then go to fight first Jorge Linares to capture the WBA title. And that fight, by the way, featured a knockdown of Lomachenko from Linares. We also just saw Linares lose to Devin Haney a couple weeks ago. But this was a very difficult and tough fight for Lomachenko. He ends up stopping Linares via TKO in the 10th round. But yeah, that was a big test for Lomachenko. And then he would go on to fight Pedraza, who also fought a pretty competitive fight. It was a unanimous decision win for Lomachenko, but you could tell by this point that, opponents aren't getting dominated by Lomachenko in the same way that they were, at 130 and 126. But then Lomachenko fights Anthony Corolla, who went the distance twice versus Jorge Linares, and Lomachenko knocked Corolla out in the 4th round. Beautiful knockout. And it was actually probably the signature knockout of Lomachenko's career. He hasn't really been a, put your lights out type of fighter. I mean, he's done it a couple times. I think he knocked out Roman Rocky Martinez pretty dramatically. So this is more one of those. But for Lomachenko, he's more somebody who dominates somebody technically, where he is hitting a lot and not getting hit much at all. Just totally psychologically damaging the opponent to where they don't even really want to continue the fight. That's been Lomachenko's MO. So after knocking out Anthony Corolla, he fights Luke Campbell in a competitive, another unanimous decision win. Luke Campbell had his moments, won a few rounds, and by this point, Lomachenko has the WBA belt, the WBO belt, and the vacant WBC belt, which they then promoted to franchise champion, which kicks off a lot of controversy because when he then fights Teofimo Lopez in a fight where it happened during the pandemic. When this fight was announced, most people, including myself, was like, this is too much too soon for Teofimo Lopez. Like, why are they putting this young 22-year-old in the ring with this guy with such a vast experience and such legendary skill, where it's clear that if Lopez loses this fight, then depending on how he loses, this could just be one of those career setbacks where fighters have real difficulty recovering from. Well, the WBC inserted their title into this matchup, and this is just after granting Devin Haney actual champion status. So the WBC created a mess where they've got one belt for, up for grabs between Teofimo Lopez and Vasyl Lomachenko, with Lomachenko coming in with the title, and then they have another belt that sits with Devin Haney. Very confusing, another topic for another day. But Lomachenko comes into this Lopez fight a pretty significant favorite, although the one thing we did know is that Teofimo Lopez is blessed with extraordinary punching power and the snap quickness to be able to, boom, just deliver that quick knockout blow on the drop of a dime. Very few possess that type of just mind-blowing physical ability. Teofimo Lopez is one of those athletes who's able to do that. So Lomachenko starts this fight very slow. To the viewers, it's like, damn, Lomachenko's falling behind on the scorecard against young Lopez, and lo and behold, Lopez wins this fight via unanimous decision. Yes, Lomachenko made a good run in the later rounds, and some don't think that Teofimo Lopez really won all of the first rounds, or most of the first rounds, the way that most people thought that he did. So it's kind of disputed, but not really. Like, this was definitely, one, an overachieving performance by Lopez in terms of what the expectation was coming in, because we thought that if Lopez was going to beat Lomachenko, he was going to have to beat him by freak knockout, because he wasn't going to out-sweet science, outbox Lomachenko. Well, that's pretty much what he did. He actually outboxed the boxer throughout the first several rounds, and then it was Lomachenko playing catch-up. Lopez is the one who actually finished the strongest in the 12th round after receiving a big cut. So he edged out the victory, and it really, was a defining moment, a real potential shift in the sport of boxing, especially in the lightweight division. So Lomachenko, has a lot of questions to answer because they started attributing the reasons why he lost to, a bad shoulder, COVID, kind of setting back his, routines and everything that goes into Lomachenko's legendary preparation. Like, you look at this guy's training habits, they're on another level. They're very unorthodox. He's also a left-hander if, southpaws aren't, naturally awkward enough. So Lomachenko has been this puzzle that's been, nearly impossible to crack, and Teofimo Lopez just did that in their big showdown. And since he didn't grant Lomachenko an immediate rematch, I was thinking, what's Lomachenko going to do next? Like, is he going to do a cross-promotional fight with Gervonta Davis? I wasn't expecting him to do that, especially after a loss. So it's like, do you go back and fight Linares, who you've already fought and beaten? Luke Campbell? It's tough to do cross-promotional anything, so I don't see him doing a fight against Devin Haney, even though Devin Haney, at least seemed to want that fight when there was confusion over who had the WBC title, which there still is. Only now it's Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez as opposed to Devin Haney and Vasyl Lomachenko. But I was really curious as to who the next Lomachenko opponent was going to be. And I thought, it would probably be a good time, since I felt that he hit his physical ceiling, to go back to 130, where you were able to kind of dust off your opponents in a lot, I won't say easy, but an easier fashion, and just look more dominant round by round, where, they started calling you the Matrix. They started doing these viral videos where you got your hands down, ducking and slipping 12 punches at a time. Maybe not 12 punches, but you get the point. And so going back to 130 would have opened up other opportunities, like a potential fight with, Shakur Stevenson, Oscar Valdez, because these are also guys who are under the same promotion with Bob Arum in Top Rank. So there's Valdez, there's Shakur Stevenson, there's Jamel Herring. Different opportunities at 130. I think that the potential Mikey Garcia ship has sailed, since it seems like, Garcia's been hell-bent on spending his time at 147, if not 140. I've never liked Mikey Garcia at 147, even with that win over Jesse Vargas. I thought that he could have been king potentially at 135. Maybe even 140, but another topic again for another day. So what does Lomachenko do? He doesn't go back to 130. He actually seeks out one of the most rugged, durable, and just kind of dangerous and lanky, tall, just awkward fighters that he could have picked, especially after a loss where, there's a lot of questions that you might want answered yourself, especially if you don't know that you're 100% physically, with your bad shoulder or whatever the injury might be. Nakatani is a tough guy to test your questions against, man, because Masayoshi Nakatani, he was largely unknown to the American, boxing public, and had a regional title in Japan and would defend it fight after fight in Osaka, Japan. And I'm talking like 8 to 10 title defenses. And then he comes to the United States and fights Teofimo Lopez, which is supposed to be like a Teofimo Lopez showcase, because this is when Teofimo Lopez was just really starting to buzz, when he became like that, to boxing hardcores, the new must-see shiny object who's got these viral knockouts and doing backflips after the knockouts. This was kind of supposed to be a showcase for Lopez. And this is before he wins the IBF title against Richard Comey, and 2 fights before he fights Lomachenko. So Lopez and Nakatani kick off, and it's immediately apparent that Lopez is having difficulty with the length of Nakatani. Nakatani is throwing this scud missile of an overhand right hand that is not Marcos Maidana-like, but it definitely takes a different trajectory. And he mixes his shots up. He's got a very long jab. This is a 5'11" versus 5'7" matchup that we're getting in Nakatani versus Lomachenko. 5'11" and a half technically, so almost a 5-inch height advantage for Nakatani. And reach-wise, we're talking 71 inches versus 65 and a half inch reach. So, and style-wise, Lomachenko is not like a Manny Pacquiao where his short arms can start pumping in ultra speeds as his, legs just carry him towards you and out of range, in and out of range with that type of athleticism. Lomachenko has outstanding footwork, but it's implemented differently where it's more, the positioning and the angles that he's taking versus the amount of ground that he's able to cover in the blink of an eye with the hand speed to match. So Lomachenko's going to have to account for these dimensional issues. And so Nakatani gives Teofimo Lopez, in my view, the toughest fight in Lopez's career. You could argue that the Lomachenko fight was tougher for Teofimo Lopez, but in the early rounds, it wasn't Teofimo Lopez who was racking up rounds against Nakatani. It was Nakatani stealing a couple of those early rounds where intensity in the broadcast starts to heighten, like, hey, is Teofimo Lopez going to be able to figure this out? Well, he did end up figuring it out, made some adjustments, had a better second half of the fight, but it was still rugged. They were still trading. Teofimo Lopez didn't truly put his stamp on that fight, and to the point where he looked like the least confident Teofimo Lopez I've ever seen. He's in the ring getting the post-fight interview, and he says, one, I had a lot of personal stuff going on in my life that, distracted me from this fight, but, no excuses. He fought a hell of a fight. I'm glad that I came out with the win. I don't know if I need to be fighting these tall fighters again. I don't need to be fighting these 6-footers. So he actually acknowledged, which is kind of a level of transparency that you don't always get from elite fighters. But he acknowledged that Nakatani's, size and his punching power and the speed that he's throwing these punches, he mixes it up too. He's got the jab that goes high and low, and again, it's a long, fierce jab. Like, he kind of puts something into it. And after this Teofimo Lopez versus Nakatani fight, where, again, Lopez wins the decision, Nakatani fights former Olympian, currently about to be on trial for the murder of his baby's mother, or would-be baby's mother. She was pregnant with the baby. Look up the details of Felix Verdejo's legal mayhem, just unspeakable acts, and rest in peace to the victims. Very, very disturbing story. We might never see Verdejo free again, let alone in the ring again. So let's let that, nightmare run its course legally, and hopefully justice is served. I mean, that is truly, truly terrible. But Nakatani's fight after that tough fight with Teofimo Lopez was against Felix Verdejo. And this was a fight of the year contender. It turned out to be a super rugged fight. Verdejo hurt Nakatani badly a couple times in that fight, but Nakatani just his chin and his ability to just start fighting back when he gets hit, because he does get hit. But, the fact that he went to 12 rounds with Teofimo Lopez should tell you something about his durability. And he ends up stopping Felix Verdejo via TKO in the 9th round. This was a grueling fight, and that just seems to be the type of environment that Nakatani is down to thrive in, which makes this Lomachenko versus Nakatani matchup that much more interesting, because it's clear that this is not a guy that you're going to get to quit on the stool between rounds. And Lomachenko is not a detach you from your senses knockout puncher, so you're not going to make this a short night with the right punch. I mean, if he just blows Nakatani away, I would be mind blown. And if he's able to look like the Lomachenko of old, that's just super, like, swimming without getting wet. You're in there, in the pocket against this taller fighter, and you're able to fight in close range, hit him while slipping everything that he's throwing your way. If he's able to outclass Nakatani to where this fight doesn't look like a Nakatani-style fight, I would also be mind blown. So it's like, something's got to give. Either we're going to get Lomachenko or we're not. Are we going to get a tentative Lomachenko who's going to give away the first few rounds like he did against Teofimo Lopez? Are we going to get an aggressive Nakatani who hits and hurts Lomachenko early? The more I think about this shorter southpaw versus much taller orthodox fighter who's always looking to throw these combinations and these long punches and to mix it up, who's got a durable chin, it just sounds like we're in for a long night. And if Lomachenko isn't 100% Lomachenko, if his shoulders aren't feeling top notch, if he isn't able to turn back the clock and maybe be like, 29-year-old Lomachenko as opposed to 33-year-old Lomachenko, if he is a even slightly reduced or diminished version of Lomachenko, oh boy, he's going to have his hands full. That's why I thought that this fight was such an interesting selection in opponents. It's like, not even Comey. Like, I don't know if the ideal is that Lomachenko wants to get that rematch, that get-back fight against Teofimo Lopez, and maybe is thinking, what better way to prove myself and that I am deserving of this rematch than if I fight the guy that Teofimo Lopez had the most trouble with and beat him in a more demonstrative fashion than Teofimo Lopez was able to. Because, if he does do that, yes, I think the audience would be saying, hey, you guys might have to run that back. Now, I don't know if Teofimo Lopez's next fight is going to be after Kambosos. That fight was just postponed because Teofimo Lopez tested positive for COVID, so he's now going to have to go through the protocols. And I believe he was actually symptomatic, so he's actually sick. So it looks like this was scheduled for August, so he's going to have to fight Kambosos, which pushes back his next fight, which it sounds like he's entertaining the possibility of him versus Devin Haney to square away any WBC title confusion. If that is indeed the course that's going to play out, well, then it's going to be interesting to see how this whole Lomachenko versus Nakatani winner plays out, because they would have to wait a while unless Teofimo Lopez would rather fight them being, Lomachenko, if he beats Nakatani, than to fight Devin Haney. But what I'm seeing in this Lomachenko versus Nakatani fight is, Lomachenko has a lot of heart. It's not all skill, and if skill doesn't work, then you're out of the fight. I think that he's got a ton of heart. You don't get here without tremendous discipline and desire. So I do think that he can dig very deep. I mean, I thought he had to dig deep against Linares. I mean, to beat Gary Russell Jr., he's still the only guy to ever beat Gary Russell Jr. He's the only guy to beat Gary Russell Jr. He's the only guy to beat Nicholas Walters. He's the only guy to beat Guillermo Rigondeaux till this day. I mean, when you've got a reputation of giving people their first and only L, I mean, damn, you've done some things. But I really think that the timing and the choice of opponent is just sketchy here. So I think that Lomachenko is going to want to make this a Lomachenko-style fight. But I think that the writing's on the wall that, hey, man, this is going to be, I think, the most difficult fight in Lomachenko's career, even if he wins this fight via decision. Because I don't think he's going to stop Nakatani. Because, again, I thought that 135 lightweight was kind of his ceiling, where his physical gifts kind of met their match. Like, do not go beyond this point, because you're starting to be the smaller fighter, the noticeably smaller and not as strong fighter. I might be blowing it out of proportion with the strength part, because he is a pretty strong, bodily-wise, strong fighter. Again, not a devastating puncher. So I don't think he's going to get Nakatani out of there. So if you're not going to get him out of there, you're going to have to be in there for a long time. And I just don't see him swimming and not getting wet. I don't see him not getting hit round after round. So I actually think that this is going to be a high volume battle of attrition. And we don't really see Lomachenko in too many of those types of fights. A little more so recently. Again, at lightweight, he's had more of these difficulties. But I think that that's going to be amplified against a guy as down to get in and stay in the trenches as Nakatani. I just don't see any other way that this fight could really play out. I don't think it's going to be an uneventful chess match type of battle. No, I think that Lomachenko is going to actually have to put his hard hat on and probably take more punches than maybe he has in his entire career in a fight. Like, this could be a very, kind of shave your shelf life as a fighter a bit type of fight. I think it's going to be somewhat even. I think that Nakatani is going to find him with that right hand, and it's going to, also tap him with that, sweeping left hook that he throws. He throws a very wide hook, so he throws that long jab, but then he'll throw like a wide hook, because he's not too worried about your counters. Like, he throws it in a fast enough way to where, yes, his chin is upright and he is there to get hit, but he's taking chances, not Ricardo Mayorga-like chances, but not too far off. Like, I just short of calling him reckless. It just seems like he is more confident that when the bullets start flying, he's not going to be the one to wilt. And in most cases, he's been right. I mean, his one career loss is a decision loss, close decision loss against probably the most dangerous fighter in the division, Teofimo Lopez. So Lomachenko might get a favorable scorecard from these judges that say that he won, but I think that if he does win, it's going to be a split decision or a very disputed, like, you know, one where the public has a problem with the scoring. You know, I'm almost tempted to take Nakatani here because, like, Lomachenko is a generational wizard when it comes to the sweet science. He's done just, you know, remarkable things. But when the rubber hits the road here, he's going to be in there with a significantly bigger opponent who is not chinny and who throws enough volume to where, you know, you throw enough shit on the wall, some of this stuff is going to stick. And I think that it will. So I think Lomachenko is going to be able to get inside and needs to get inside because he can't stay at super long range and work it out there. I don't think he's going to, you know, fight a Floyd Mayweather versus Hatton-like fight. Or we'll say Floyd Mayweather versus Diego Corrales, where you're fighting the taller guy and you're able to pot shot him at range by countering effectively. I don't think that Lomachenko can really do that to Nakatani because of the angles, because of the volume. Even though if you are able to implement that game plan, it does reduce the guy's volume because nobody likes to get counter shot cleanly. So maybe Lomachenko tries that. I just don't think it's going to be, I think it's more like you're going to have to just put your head down, bite on the mouthpiece a little bit more than you're used to, and you're going to have to go into the pit. And I think that he will. And I think that he will make it a very exciting and entertaining fight in that way. And I am going to go Lomachenko to edge this fight via decision. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a draw. I think that that's how close this fight might turn out. But I'll go with the slightly favorable judging towards Lomachenko. We're talking, 7 rounds to 5, where they're reading the split decision cards, where they say the first card for Lomachenko, second card for Nakatani, and the third round, and it becomes very dramatic. And it's a look of relief and happiness in the Lomachenko corner. If I, had to guess at an outcome, I think that is a very possible one. So I'm going to go with Lomachenko via razor close decision win. But yeah, let me know what you think about this very interesting matchup. I mean, the ball's on Lomachenko to pick Nakatani as your comeback get well fight. But yeah, I can't wait. And I can't wait to see how the lightweight division continues to shape up. It sucks that there was a Teofimo Lopez versus Kambosos setback calendar-wise. I hope Teofimo Lopez gets well soon. But also, Gervonta Davis is about to fight up at 140. I think that because he's fighting up at 140, Tank's days at 130 in the weight class of the Oscar Valdez's, Shakur Stevenson, and so forth, I think Gervonta Davis at 130 is done. So depending on what happens with him and Barrios, I expect Davis to come back to 135 and fight there. But again, that would take a cross-promotional effort because Davis is with PBC and Lomachenko, Nakatani, Teofimo Lopez are with Top Rank, Bob Arum, fight on ESPN. And then obviously Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia are on DAZN. But yeah, please leave your comments in the comments. Again, I'm going Lomachenko via very difficult, close decision, maybe the toughest fight physically, just in terms of the beating that you take in Lomachenko's career. I see that as being possible. I don't like the recurring injuries, shoulders, whatever the case might be. 33 years old. I just see, maybe him winning. Again, super close decision, but really having to pay for it. Nakatani is not to be played with. This is gonna be really tough. But please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.